Welcome everybody. My name is Veronica Chamberlain. I'm part of the committee of the Friends of the Heath Robinson Museum. And it's wonderful to see so many people here who were involved in the founding of the museum, because today we're celebrating 4 years since it was opened. So it was on this very day, 15th of October, that the museum was opened, and many people here were present on that day. So all the people speaking on this call were there. Firstly, Stuart Hobley, who was at that time Area Director for London and South England of the Heritage Lottery Fund, and Jean Lammerman, Councillor, former Mayor of Harrow, and a trustee of the museum, and also Craig Shepheard, who very kindly volunteered to take pictures on that day and produce some iconic images which have been used ever since. What will happen is we're going to have a slideshow by Craig. So Craig, would you like to start sharing that?
Yeah. Hopefully you can all now see a title slide.
Yep, that's fantastic. So if you just want to go through those, Craig, I'll just mention a bit about what Craig did for us. He's volunteered for the museum on numerous other occasions, taking pictures for the shop of some of the goods on sale and views of the museum. He also photographed our very own Friends event with Danny Finkelstein. And I think it's fair to say that the quality of Craig's pictures has enabled the museum to punch above its weight. And so we're very, very grateful to Craig. Of course, as well as being a volunteer for the museum, he's also a well-known press photographer on local and national media with 5 UK front covers to his name. And he's a professional photographer at events of all kinds. I don't have time to tell you all of his achievements, but I hope that he will. So the order for today is that first Stuart Hobley will speak, as it was his £1.3 million grant which set the museum on its way. Then we'll have Councillor and former Harrow Mayor Jean Lammerman as trustee of the museum responding, and then Craig will give his presentation. And I hope there will be time for questions, but I know that Craig needs to leave promptly at 11:30. So after that I will wind up. So I would now like to ask Craig to carry on until we get a picture of Stuart Hobley.
So these are the various pictures of the work in progress. So that was the day 4 years ago of the opening.
Michael
Look at the timing there, the ribbon was just falling through the air after it was snipped. That was good timing.
Very good.
And then to Stuart.
So I'd like to hand over now to Stuart Hobley.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to my attic in Essex, I think I should start by saying, which I find myself living in for the last 6 months. And I should clarify, it wasn't my personal 1.3 million which set the museum on its way. At that point, I worked for the National Lottery. So if you all buy lottery tickets, which I'm assuming you all do, which would be great, it was money that came from the National Lottery, which actually sort of helped get the museum on its way. And I'm very pleased to see from those photos that I don't appear to have aged at all in the last 4 years, which is fantastic. I don't want to sort of get in between Craig's talk, so I just want to say a few words. Firstly, a very happy birthday to the museum and a very hearty well done to all the staff and volunteers who have got you here. I don't underestimate all the hard work that it took to get. I mean, it's very easy to give away money, but it's an incredible amount of hard work to pull a museum out of the ground, get it open and have it be a success in the way that it has been. I'm personally a very big fan of museums. I think they're really extraordinary places that bring real joy to many, many people. And often you go to a museum to see a particular exhibition or learn about history, but it's the experience you have there which means you go back and back again. And I think the museum, the Heath Robinson Museum, is a real experience. I mean, I know Robinson was very much known for his illustrations, those crazy eccentric contraptions, but there's so much more to his life that the museum talks about. There's his gently acerbic war satire, his career as an illustrator, the work he did designing the career of ocean liners, which is quite incredible too. And I think this museum, one of the reasons why it's been such a success over the last 4 years is it's become very much that gateway drug to a whole world of other designers and artists and illustrators who, like Heath Robinson, have a very sort of contemporary take on the world today, and not forgetting all those incredible activities organised by the Friends as well. So whilst I think we all find ourselves in various states of lockdown, you're not locked out of your local museum. So I'm sure you've all been, I'm sure you're all big fans of the museum, and you're going in a very socially distanced way to experience the museum now that it's back open. So I just want to say again, very happy birthday. And I see the online shop is fully stocked just in time for Christmas as well. So I'd encourage you all to spend some money there and support the museum. Happy birthday, Heath Robinson Museum.
Thank you very much, Stuart. And now Jean will respond on behalf of the trustees.
Okay, when I talk, we should trigger it. I've been in plenty of Zoom meetings, so much now I call them Zoom corridors, because you never see the light of day, really. Behind me is the photograph of the museum and the lake. And generally it works with one person in, but if I do disappear into the lake, I am still here. Just to say that in terms of Stuart's contribution, what insight, Stuart, thank you. In terms of being the area director and the 1.3 million, that was very generous. But for us, it was much more when working with Cynthia all that time ago. Cynthia Wells is our wonderful chairman. I'm her vice chairman, have been for some time, by the way, but she has led what she's been doing. The special thing about this is a national museum, but it's community-led, it's community supported, it's been driven by the community from day one. And with that injection 4 years ago, we were able to open our museum. It's also an amenity, and I think Stuart said, gives people joy, and that is very much part of what we hope to do. The area before with West House was really quite, well, not run down, but it lacked any purpose. And now it's a very purposeful destination for visitors and so on. So for us in Harrow, speaking with my Harrow councillor hat on, it's made a difference to this part of the world, and it adds to the richness. It's also had wider recognition. Not only do we get inquiries from all over the world, but we've also, and I'm pleased to say, with various people's help, I was able to manage to run a visit to the museum a couple of Junes ago now, essentially from all the London mayors across London, either present mayors or past mayors. And that was one of the things we tried to do. We're very good at social media, etc., but we also want word of mouth to spread. And thanks to them, they've actually been telling other people about it. So 33 boroughs across London know about it and talk about it. And finally, it's going to be a big congratulations, but not thank you and gratitude to HLF alone, but thank you and gratitude to all those original people who grew the museum. And 4 years ago, it was a delight. And I saw a photograph, one of your photographs, Craig. I think it's me, but my hair's a bit shorter. I can see Sharon. So Stuart, really a genuine thank you for having faith in us. And you can see as a result what you've got now. So a big thank you and happy birthday, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jean. Right, we'll now hand over to Craig and hear his presentation. Thank you very much, Craig.
Well, hopefully you should now see a title screen which says "From Pelicans to Politicians," which may sound like a weird title to begin with, but I've got a selection of photos that I've taken, and these pictures have all sold and have gone into a variety of magazines, newspapers, and even a couple of books. I've started off with this one because here's a rare picture of me actually at work, because I'm normally the guy behind the camera, so I don't tend to get that many photos of me actually in the shot. So this was quite a fun photo. So the lady here runs a cheerleading group that was being used for a boxing match, which was rugby heroes, so current rugby players that were then having a boxing match with retired boxers, and they had these cheerleader girls, and she's the leader of them. So that's quite a funky picture to start with. But the title's about From Pelicans to Politicians. Now, I used to work in London, and lunchtime was my time, where I would go wandering around the streets of London, and I kept coming upon strange images. So we click to the next one. This chap used to go into St James's Park every lunchtime and would feed the pelicans. I'm not too sure if you're aware, but in 1664, the Russian ambassador donated 6 pelicans to the British monarch at the time. And to this date, if a pelican ever unfortunately passes away, the Russians then send another pelican to the park. So there's about 6 of them wandering around St James's Park. And this chap here befriended the pelican. And he would literally walk along the path and the pelican would follow him. Just this one particular one was very friendly. And he sat down on the park bench and the pelican jumped up beside him and then eventually jumped up onto the backrest. And some of the pictures I then captured literally went around the world. So normally a lot of my pictures only get published in British newspapers or magazines. And but this one, the pelican jumped up beside him and is then looking down as he's doing the crossword. So it went into various newspapers, for example here, where it says, oh, unfortunately it's a bit of a low resolution, but it says, no, it's not a pelican book. And in if we click back, the Daily Mirror said, water bird with a large bill, 7 letters. This picture, quirky photos like this, the whole world's media love. Now, one of the things, if you take a picture of a UK celebrity, say somebody like Stephen Fry or Martin Freeman, they'll only go in the UK newspapers, but a quirky photo like this can literally go all around the world. So much so that it actually ended up in a National Geographic book called Angry Birds. We click onto the next one. This is the photo that appeared in the Angry Birds. So it looked like he was angry, but actually the pelican had just jumped up onto the backrest and was balancing. And then it literally walked along to where the fellow was and then was then looking down at his newspaper. What you don't realise is standing behind me are 40 German tourists, all taking the same photo. The difference is that I then submitted that photo to a press agency, and then it literally went into all the newspapers in the UK and the New York Post, and it carried on selling. As a press photographer, you actually sell the license to use the image. So every time it gets used, I get paid a fee. And the amount that you get varies on the size of the image, the circulation of the newspaper, and what page it's on. You get a lot more money for the front page, and you get a lot of money for the back page, but the pages in between, the amount of money you get is fairly consistent. But this picture has been used, I think it's been sold about 13 separate times just because it's such a funky image. We then go on to politicians. So there's Alistair Darling at Budget Day. Now, technically, I was actually meant to be at work in my engineering job, but I had a very early lunch break that particular day and took this lovely picture of Alistair Darling holding up the budget box. That's the same budget box that every Chancellor of the Exchequer uses, which is why it looks so battered. So inside these red boxes are the speech that he would then give. The funny thing was, unfortunately, none of my pictures sold on that particular day, but a picture of a chap who was standing behind him. Inside number 11, there is a fantail window above the door. He then took a picture looking back at the crowd of press photographers. Unfortunately, I only have a low resolution image, but as the Chancellor lifts up, there was a photographer in this window at the top, photographing and taking pictures of the world's media. Now, I was standing on a wall to try and get above all these other photographers with all their cameras and flashes, etc. And my photo ended up appearing on the front page of the newspaper when technically I should have been at work. I've managed to get into Downing Street a few times with a press card and taken various pictures, but there was one particular time that Michael Gove was walking in, and there were 5 press photographers all standing in front of number 10 and photographing people coming to a cabinet meeting. And there was another photographer who was walking up and down the pavement on the side away from number 10, because the press photographers aren't allowed right up to the number 10 building. And it was a wet morning, and Michael Gove slipped on a drain cover and literally fell on the floor. And even though there were 5 of Fleet Street's finest in front of number 10, none of us got the picture of him falling onto the floor. It was only the photographer who managed to get him falling that got the image. But then that earned him somewhere in the region of about £12,000, because it was such a funny picture that loads of newspapers, not only UK newspapers, but ones around the world, then used. So if you can get the right picture, and you're the only one that gets the right picture, you can actually make an awful lot of money. But those pictures are hard to come by. But some photos make loads of money and you're really surprised. So this one, this is a UKIP supporter, and it was on one of the general election days. As you go to a voting booth, there are the people outside who register who you voted for. So I took various pictures of the people going in and out, etc. And then I took a picture of the rosettes. And this UKIP rosette just kept selling. It's a really simple, basic photo, but you have these iconic images that are just used time and time and time again by the newspapers. So every time there was a story about UKIP, if they didn't have a picture of the relevant politician, they would just use this as a symbol. And you know, sometimes you get £20 for a simple use, and sometimes a little bit more if it's a bigger image. But it's a licensed image that the press photographers sell. So every time it gets used, you get paid a fee. Going on to another election day. This is one of my front covers. This is the front cover of the Times the day after the election. Now, I turned up at 5 minutes to 7 in the morning at a primary school in St Albans to take this sort of top picture of people queuing in. Unfortunately, because I've gone through several computers over the time, I couldn't find the high resolution image for it, but the story behind the image is quite amusing. So the door to the polling station was open, and I walked straight in, and the presiding officer went absolutely crazy at me, saying, "You're not allowed in here. You've got to wait till 7 o'clock." So I walked back out the door, and the young couple at the front were beginning to go into the polling station, and said, "Well, you've just got to wait here." And then the couple of people behind were some of those ballot people, and they literally joined this queue. I stepped back and took a picture of the queue of people and the polling station sign. And, you know, so at 7 o'clock in the morning, they were queuing. The photos later on was the fact that still at 10 o'clock in the evening, there were still problems with the queues. Anyway, the presiding officer walked out, looked at this queue and said, "Right, it's 7 o'clock, you can come in now." So the people queued for less than 20 seconds. But the picture suited the story about how they were queuing at 7 in the morning, and then still at 10 o'clock at night, there were massive queues. And it's the old press adage, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I was quite pleased the next morning to see my photo on the front cover of the Times. Let's go on to the Buncefield explosion. Now, this was about 13 years ago, and I used to be the engineering manager of a factory, which in the photo is a factory unit just sort of down here on the right-hand side, very close to the Buncefield oil terminal. And at the time, I was just doing press photography as a bit of a hobby, and at weekends and stuff, and just putting various images into different press agencies and seeing what happened. Now, in the factory, I was the engineering manager, and we had a review of the fire alarm systems and all of the fire procedures. Now, it was a 4-acre factory, and it used to make multi-core solder for the electronics industry, and we had really dodgy acids and alkalis and highly flammable solvents. And we had to train the fire brigade on the different procedures. So where the solvents were, they literally couldn't fight the fire because it was just too much. They would just dampen down the other buildings to make sure that the fire doesn't propagate to other buildings. So we ran through a fire risk scenario to say, if we have a fire in the factory unit on the left-hand side, I mean, this was a 4-acre site, so there were lots of factory units on our big engineering side. And then somebody says, well, what happens if we have a fire? You know, the assembly points out the front of that building, the fire brigade will have to be there to fight the fire. So we then said, well, we'll have to move them somewhere else, and we had to come up with a position. And then somebody said to me, well, what happens if Dixon's head office building, which was next to us, catches fire? And my precise words were, forget Dixon's, there's a flipping oil terminal a quarter of a mile away. If that goes up, we'll have to evacuate the entire industrial estate. Well, 6 weeks after I made that expression, it actually happened. And you had incredible fires like this. The flame was tremendous. The annoying thing as a press photographer was that I had just a little compact camera with me as I shot over to see what happened, and I took a whole variety of photos, which 6 of which have appeared in the Buncefield explosion book. But at the time, I didn't have an iPhone or a BlackBerry, so I had no means of sending one of these photos over to my press agency. They later quoted me in an article about it, saying, had I had an iPhone or a BlackBerry, I could have earned in excess of £100,000, because it would have been the very first photo that would have hit every news desk on this planet. Bugger, I think you say to that, but never mind. Nowadays, you can't do that because of Twitter and Instagram. There were so many other people on there that will be tweeting various photos that that exclusivity wouldn't count. So, but for the first hour and a half before Sky and BBC and other people got to this explosion, then that's when you have a really unique photo, and a unique photo is worth an incredible amount of money. One of my best-selling photos is this chap. This is Mervyn King. He's the ex-governor of the Bank of England. And I was working on a construction project at the Willis Tower in London. And on the way down, I came off the train line and walked past the front of the Bank of England. And there were a load of press photographers getting organised, and they were setting up a cricket pitch, which I found a bit unusual to see in the centre of London. And they said at 11 o'clock in the morning, the governor of the Bank of England is coming out, and he is the chairman of the English Cricket Foundation. And part of that foundation's role is to encourage children to play cricket in schools. So at the same time, so I took yet another early lunch break and went back with my cameras and took a picture of the various cricketing celebrities they had there, including Mike Gatting, Jeff Boycott, etc. And then Mervyn King was watching Mike Gatting bowl against a group of 10-year-old school children. And you just got this nice picture of him looking on at the children. Now, because it's most pictures you'll see of Mervyn King, he's always frowning or looking sad. And anytime there was any bad political story about the Bank of England, they would use some other photographer's image. And anytime there was some decent news, they would use this image. So this image on its own has earned me about £3,500 over a sort of a 2 to 3 year period. It's been the front cover on the front of The Independent. It's been a double page spread in The Guardian. And then lots of times it appears as a 1-inch image in the newspaper. So every time there was a story about the Bank of England, they'd just use this picture. So that's been quite a successful photo for me. Right, and I'm going to talk about the royal wedding. So I went into London to photograph the royal wedding, and it was incredible the number of people that were there for Prince William's wedding. You just could not move. So when I came out of Westminster Tube Station, it was absolutely rammed everywhere. There was no way I was going to get anywhere close to the cathedral. So I thought, well, what else could I do? So I decided that I could use my press pass and go into number 10 Downing Street, and then wait for the Prime Minister and his wife to come out to go along to the royal wedding, because all the rest of the world's photographers were trying to get pictures of William and Kate. The problem as a freelance photographer is that you're always trying to compete against all the big news agencies and all the newspapers' own individual photographers, so you have to come up with a different image. And David and Samantha Cameron were coming out of number 10, and then he's pointing to the car that they're about to go into. But this image became quite useful because of the fact that Samantha Cameron wasn't wearing a hat, and there was a whole load of controversy that at the royal wedding all the women should have worn hats, but she didn't have a tiara or a hat. But it was quite a nice clear picture of the two of them, and I actually used that image on the back of my business card for many years. So yeah, it's been quite a good one. The other thing about the royal wedding is there was such a demand for images all over the world, from literally Spanish, Italian, Swedish, Danish newspapers. Everybody was really interested, but you have to try and come up with a slightly different angle. And some of the photos that did really well for me are ones like this one. There was such a high police presence to keep everybody secure, but it was such a long day that the policeman needed a break. So I was walking through St James's Park, trying to get close to the palace, ready to take a photo of when the couple come out and kiss. Then I saw these 3 policemen literally having some sandwiches and a break, and that image sold. So sometimes it's the image that surrounds the story that can sometimes do really well. So, for example, as I walked through Pall Mall, there were some people having tea, tea and scones and cake, and they were waiting for the royal couple to come down the Pall Mall in their stuff. And this particular image sold to a Danish newspaper. And that's the weird thing about photography. You're always taking pictures of stuff local to you, but there can sometimes be a worldwide demand. And everybody wanted to see lots of photos of what all the British people were doing to celebrate the royal wedding. So you've got your tea and your scones. I mean, it's such a classic image of Brits enjoying a royal wedding. But yeah, that did well. And then the next photo we go on to is David Bailey. So David Bailey and I shared a photo exhibition. Now, this was about 12 years ago when Nokia were just about to launch their first ever 8-megapixel camera phone. And David Bailey was employed by Nokia to promote the phone and its capabilities. So he took a selection of pictures, and I entered a competition, and I was one of the lucky winners, and they couriered this new phone that hadn't even been released to market. And I went round taking a variety of photos, and 6 of mine were chosen for the public exhibition. Most of the other, there were 10 winners in the public exhibition, and most of them had 1 or 2 pictures, but I actually had 6. And then I got to meet one of my heroes, David Bailey. So just after this photo was taken, I had a little chat with him and said about the fact that he once famously said the best picture, the best camera you've got is the one that's with you when you need to take a picture. So he actually started roaring with laughter, and he nodded down to his hands where he was holding this sort of old baseball cap, and he slowly unfurled the baseball cap, and inside he had a Canon G9 camera. So he was still living true to his word about carrying a camera with you at all times, because that's the one, doesn't matter what camera you've got, you just need to make sure you have a camera with you. So it was a little secretive joke between the two of us. Later on that evening, I went with the Nokia PR team into the London nightclub Mahikis, and I bumped into one of the sugar babes, Keisha Buchanan, and I still had my little compact camera, and I took a photo of her. And then she said to me, "No, you've got to delete that," and that wasn't a problem because I know I can recover the image later. She handed the camera to her bodyguard and said, "Do you want a picture like this?" And then she came round and gave me a massive kiss on the cheek. So this is one of my best photography days ever. I had my first ever exhibition, met one of my photography heroes, and I snogged a sugar babe. Anyway, this is kind of an unusual one, and I live in St Albans, so not too far from Pinner. And I just walked down through the high street one day, and Poundland had a problem with their roller shutter door. It basically got jammed. So I took some photos of these people, and there's a sign on it saying, "Look, we're still open. If you can crawl in, then come on in. We're still open." I'm hoping that this link is going to work. We'll hopefully go to a video, which if I just drag that onto, hold on, slight technical issue here. Right. Let me just restart this video. So I also now do video images. So basically, doing quick loads of videos, I loaded it to Lad Bible, which then put it on Facebook. Even though it's only a Poundland, people were still desperate to come in. So just crawl in, mind your head. This video has actually been viewed over 1.5 million times, which is my most watched video ever. So it just goes to show you the British public are always keen for a bargain, even if they have to crawl on their hands and knees to go into it. Right, I'll just quickly click back to the next picture. Right, this picture sold in the Daily Mirror. Off in the distance, oh, I've actually got my slides in slightly the wrong order, but off in the distance, there where that yellow car is in the background, there is a massive sinkhole. And before all the police and the National Grid turned up, the fire brigade were there, and I had a photo looking into the sinkhole, which I put on Twitter. And then, here we go, this is the image. You can see just in front of this bungalow, there is a massive hole. So it's about 50 feet across. It drops down about 30 feet down into the bottom. Because I was one of the first people on the scene, and I put it on my Twitter feed, and the whole world started retweeting this particular image. And I couldn't believe how many times it was literally going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It was just retweet, retweet. And this lasted for about 37 minutes. And then the internet was like somebody had flicked a switch and turned it off. And I was thinking, well, what's happened? And basically it turned out that the chief fire officer for Herts Fire and Rescue was allowed beyond the cordon. And then he tweeted a photo looking into the hole. So there's always someone that will have a better image. And literally the entire internet went over to retweeting this better image looking directly into the sinkhole. But some you win, some you lose. But I actually got interviewed by Radio 4 because I've actually attended a couple of sinkhole incidents. For some reason, there seem to be quite a few that occur around St Albans and Hemel Hempstead. So I was interviewed on the Radio 4 Today programme, and even CNN in America had seen the images online and contacted me and interviewed me for a radio station. So this was the sinkhole that was in St Albans. This is one of my images of, you can't quite see the sinkhole, but all of these people are looking into the sinkhole. So they're gas engineers and electrical engineers trying to make the place safe. And that went and sold into the Sun newspaper. I seem to do very well with pictures of people pointing. So David Cameron was pointing, they're pointing, and there's some other ones later. I'll show you some other things that are pointing. Now here's a cute little thing. A lot of the pictures are just where I am as I'm walking around, I see things. So a local charity in St Albans made these post box toppers, and it was for a local homeless charity. And there was a little guide, and there were about 27 of them around the town. And some people had basically knitted a whole variety of different designs. So this is quite a cute one. But unfortunately, some hooligan went and burnt it. So on the right hand side, you can see the charred top, the remains of the one that had been burnt. So one of my images is there of Santa Claus. But I mean, how can you do that to Santa Claus? That's terrible. In St Albans, I've had quite an enjoyable time as the official photographer for the St Albans Fashion Show. Now, this fashion show has gone on for 4 years. Unfortunately, since they've had to do some build works at the local cathedral, they've had to stop it. But for 4 years, I had to photograph 80 very pretty women and about 20 odd blokes as well. But it's actually the longest catwalk in the UK because it uses the whole length of the nave of St Albans Cathedral. And the amount of friends of mine that volunteered to help me when I've got to photograph all these pretty women walking up and down the catwalk is quite hilarious. I've done lots of other photography directly for the cathedral. So this is when they'd opened their brand new visitor centre, and this is one of the guides, Lily, showing people around and pointing at boards. And the next picture is Lady Verulam. It's quite funny when you get pictures of people pointing. It adds just a bit of action into like a stationary image. So there's quite often I get pictures of engineers in my engineering job pointing at boiler control panels or pointing at circuit diagrams. It just adds a bit of motion into an image. And then sometimes when I'm on holiday, you see funny things. So I was on a canal boat holiday going along the River Thames with my girlfriend and my 2 boys. And this chap came zooming past on this sort of hoverboard. Underneath the water, there's a little electric motor, and he's literally swooping around like James Bond on a Tuesday morning on his way to work sort of thing. And I did a little video of that, and that ended up on Good Morning Britain. So Holly Willoughby was like discussing this video that associated with this photo on the telly in the morning. So sometimes just funny things happen as they go past you, and as long as you've always got a camera with you, obviously with the technology available in iPhones, you know, then it's really easy to take some amazing pictures. Now this picture published in the local paper, and that's my youngest son and I when we went to America to watch the solar eclipse. Now, at the age of 14, I read about solar eclipses, and the first one that was going to be in Britain was in 1999, I think, in August in Cornwall. And I went down to watch it, and the day before and the day after the solar eclipse, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. And the day of the solar eclipse in Britain, there was so much cloud you couldn't see anything. So I then decided I'd take my youngest son over to watch the solar eclipse in a place called Carbondale. Carbondale's in Illinois, and it's unique because it's the only place on this planet in the next 250 years where they can see 2 solar eclipses. So there was the one about 3 years ago where it came from the west coast of America all the way across America, cutting through Carbondale. And then in about 4 years' time, there's another one that comes up from Mexico, and where the 2 dissect is this town in Illinois. So when we got there, lovely sunny day, 1 cloud in the sky, and literally we're counting down the minutes to the start of the solar eclipse, and about 60 seconds before the solar eclipse came in, this 1 cloud came and obscured the sun. I mean, how annoying is that? And there's literally 60,000 people in this football stadium in this place with the world's media, because of this fact it's the only place you'll get 2 solar eclipses, having 60,000 people all simultaneously groan was terrible. And the solar eclipse lasted for something like 2 minutes and 24 seconds. And in the dying 7 seconds, the cloud just moved out of the way, and I managed to get this one photo. And this is called the Bailey beads. And basically, when the sun is totally obscured by the moon, you get a corona of light all the way around. And then just as the moon is passing away, you get this thing that's sometimes called the wedding ring, where you get a blast of sun just appearing. And we just saw that. And then suddenly it all came massively bright again. So you can spend all that money traveling all the way to America, paying for expensive flights to get there, and one cloud can obscure your view. But I'm going back in 4 years' time, and hopefully we'll have a better experience. Here's a picture of a local Hearts advertiser. Terry Wogan came in to open the first ever St Albans Book Festival. And because I do lots of work for the Hearts advertiser, I then was asked to come and photograph him. And then the picture of him also appeared on the front cover of Age Matters magazine. And there's pictures of him sort of being quite cheeky, and then it appeared in various websites, etc. I've also got a photograph of Queen. So press photographers have a nickname for her. She's called the Jelly Bean, because that's Cockney rhyming slang for the Queen. But it's very rare that you get a smiling photo of the Queen, because she's never grumpy looking, but she doesn't have a natural smile. So to get this picture of her with a lovely beaming smile. So there were some young children standing in front of me in Hitchin as she was walking around on one of her royal visits. And then later on that afternoon, she was going to Nebworth House, where my son was with the school. So he got to meet her later on in the afternoon. But I thought that's a lovely picture of the Queen. I seem to have a really good habit of detecting when things are going wrong, and whether it's just because I'm quite visual. So as I was walking along, I can always suddenly get a flash of the colour of a police car, and then I go and have a wander and see what's happening. Unfortunately, this was a sad story about an attempted murder. But pictures of police cars or policemen looking onto scenes always seem to do quite well. They never want to see the person that's injured or the body, because that doesn't really work well in a newspaper environment. But you know, these forensic people in white suits, I've sold loads and loads of pictures of different crime scenes with a forensic person walking in or walking out of a building holding a bag, or you get the police car logo or the back of a policeman guarding the scene. Yeah, so they always tend to do quite well in newspapers. The next image, this is Justin Lee Collins, and it led into the front cover of the Metro. Justin Lee Collins was in court for harassing his girlfriend, and it was in the Crown Court in St Albans. And I dropped my youngest son off at school at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then to walk down to the Crown Court and take a photo of him coming in to the court appearance. And then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd come out of the court. And this went on for about 3 weeks. And none of those images sold. And then on the very last day, the world's media turned up. So suddenly, where there was just like myself and maybe one other photographer, on the last day when the guilty verdict came in, there were then 37 photographers and 7 video film crew, all videoing him coming out of the Crown Court. Now, he got a guilty verdict, but not a prison sentence. And I had a little office down by the Regis office down by the train station, which is only a 3 or 4 minute walk from the Crown Court. But all the world's press didn't know that. So as I walked down from the Crown Court after he came out, he'd literally come down these steps, and this is the railway platform in St Albans, ready for him to go back into London. And he's joking with his barrister, who's the lady on the right-hand side in the black coat. And it led to this: guilty, but you wouldn't know it. The Sun did a half-page spread going guilty, he, laughing away. So he avoided a jail sentence. But my picture, because I was the only one that happened to be crossing the railway bridge and seeing him laugh, was the one that the newspapers chose. 2 weeks later, I was walking across Southwark Bridge, and Justin Lee Collins was walking towards me, but luckily he didn't know who the photographer was that took the picture that hit all the newspapers. Otherwise he could have thrown me in the Thames. The next picture, this is one of my favourite photo shoots. Helen Mirren is absolutely lovely lady. Now I turned up at this book signing because I used to do lots of book signings at lunchtime because all these celebrities are trying to promote their relevant books, and normally there's 6 or 7 photographers. And I remember photographing Stephen Fry, and they're all saying, look this way, and he couldn't tell who was talking. He said, you all have cameras in front of your face, so it's very difficult to see who's talking. So at the time I was wearing a red ski jacket, so I said, look at the chap with the red ski jacket, and I got a great picture of Stephen Fry looking down the lens. But this lovely photo of Helen Mirren, the photos at the beginning of this session look similar to the one on the book, where, you know, she's got a nice smile. Anyway, I took a couple of pictures of her, and then I put my camera down and I nodded to her and said, you've done this before, haven't you? And then she gave this lovely beaming smile and quickly took the picture of this cracking picture of her looking very happy. And sometimes having a little bit of charm when you're working with somebody, you can then get a really cracking picture. Now, the chap on the left-hand side is Matt Adams, who's the editor of the Hearts Advertiser, and obviously I've done a lot of work for him locally, and he decided to have a go at walking over hot coals. So I actually got employed to photograph all these people. The picture on the bottom left is their practice where they're walking over broken glass before they then go to walking over these hot coals. Now, the temperature monitor at the top, that's 1029 degrees is the temperature of the hot coals. Then all these volunteers decided to walk across it. Sometimes you're quite happy taking the pictures and you don't want to get involved in the act. So yeah, that's something I definitely didn't want to do, but I'm more than happy to take the pictures. So that was a paid commission by the Hearts Ad to cover that image. And then a couple of the last photos as we're getting towards the end of the presentation. This is Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise was going through a divorce with Katie Holmes, and the newspapers hadn't seen him for ages. He was filming just down the road at the Leavesden studios of Warner Brothers, and he went with his security guard and a few people to a local curry house in St Albans. Now that day I'd been to take my son to watch Watford play, and we came off on the bus in the town centre and then just walked home from there. The bus stop was literally 100 yards away from the restaurant. My editor from my press agency said, had I got a picture of Tom Cruise going in or out of that curry house, I could have earned over £50,000. But I didn't realise he was there. And when we looked at the timestamp of this security camera footage, we had literally missed him by a couple of minutes. So had I got a picture of Tom, I could have earned an awful lot of money. I actually took this photo, which is the restaurant that he went to, and I earned £25 from the Daily Mail. Not quite the same as 50,000. So sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time to get the image. So some you can earn really well and others you can't, but never mind. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the talk, and I'll stop the screen share. I know that they wanted to talk about the Friends, so I'll leave this image up online for a few minutes, but this is the link where you can join the Heath Robinson Museum Friends part. But if I stop sharing the screen, we can then go back to everyone's images.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think that was absolutely wonderful. I particularly like your David Bailey quote about the best camera is the one you have in your hand. I think that's so telling. Would anybody like to ask Craig some questions?
I think Cynthia wants to ask a question.
Okay, Cynthia, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say thank you for an absolutely wonderful talk. It took our minds off all the depressing things that are going on at the moment. And I would like to thank the Friends of Westhouse, Veronica and Ruth, for putting on such brilliant shows. It really is lovely, and it does help the museum enormously. So thank you very much indeed, all of you. Craig, Ruth, Veronica, Sharon, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Okay, anybody else like to?
So I was
Sorry,
going to
Craig.
say one brief thing. I forgot to mention during the talk that one of the things I wanted to do was give some tips to make people improve their photographs. The number one tip, particularly as a lot of you will have mobile phones, is before you take a picture, use the end of your shirt or a handkerchief or a blouse and literally just wipe the lens. People don't realize that the grease on your hands go over the lens. Your pictures will come out a lot sharper and a lot clearer if the lens is clean. So literally just give it a quick wipe and then that'll improve your photos a lot.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else got a hand raised, would like to ask something? While you're thinking about it, I'd like to ask something. I love taking pictures, but nowhere near at your level. But I'm always nervous that people don't want their picture taken. Do you have to develop a very thick skin to be a press photographer?
The trick is take the photo first, ask later. I bumped into, what's he called? Something Owen. Oh, I've forgotten his name. He was in a variety of films like The International and The Bourne Identity. It'll come back to me what his first name is. Anyways, he's a famous actor. And I was walking along Oxford Street on the way to photograph Michael Palin, who was doing a book launch. And I saw, I think is it Michael Owen? Anyway, I asked him whether I could take his photo. And then he actually said, no, I'd rather not. I'm just, just walking around. And so I then said to him, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm actually filming in Berlin. I'm just having a few days holiday in between filming the film, The International. And just need to get some shopping in. And then the two of us are walking down Oxford Street. And then he starts asking me, so what's Michael Palin up to? I said, well, he's got a book signing just down the road, starting in 15 minutes. Do you want to come along? I'm sure he'll sign a book for you. It was just really funny. The two of us are just like chatting away. But yeah, take the photo first and then
delete if necessary. Wonderful.
Thank you. Become very paranoid. Lots of people don't like their photo being taken. So when I'm covering events, I'll use like a long telephoto lens and I'll be off in the distance and I just let people chat, and sometimes don't just take a picture straight away. Just wait until somebody's smiling. So at an event, they're happy and laughing and you get a lovely beaming smile, then take the picture.
Brilliant. Thank you. Now I've got Ruth McNeil has her hand raised.
Hello, yes, thank you, Craig. Mine was just a quick question. Do you sell most of your pictures to the Press Association or equally to other media? Who are the biggest takers?
The Press Association have arrangements with all the newspapers, but I used to sell them into different agencies. So a lot of them were through an agency called Demotics, used to sell a lot of them. Unfortunately, Demotics then got bought out by Getty and they don't do them. Sometimes I'll sell directly to the newspapers, and you can literally go online and Google, and there's things like, it will be like newsdesk@sunnewspapers.co.uk, and you submit the pictures. And then the videos, I use another agency called Newsflare, and you'll see lots of these TV programs about angry neighbours or bad drivers, and Newsflare are one of the big agencies that submit videos. Videos seem to be becoming more and more popular, and you can do it directly from your phone, and literally the moment you've taken it, you can submit it online, and it's there and it's up and going. The interesting thing about the photos though is, if you are a newspaper editor or a thing and you want a particular image, say you wanted the Alistair Darling in Downing Street, for you to find an image, you actually have to search for it using words. So you have to write in picture of Alistair Darling, 11 Downing Street, budget speech, whatever, horizontal or vertical, or if you wanted a colour one or black and white. And when you submit the pictures to these press agencies, there's a load of taglines that you put in the software that you use to upload it, to then, say, so things like the picture of David Cameron coming out of number 10 Downing Street, you'd then have royal wedding. You'd also put in like London, United Kingdom, England, vertical or horizontal colour. Then you could put in, in a morning suit. All the things that you can see in the image, you would describe it. So if people wanted a picture of David Cameron in a morning suit, they could look over multiple events. And as long as you got those right tags in. The trick is, for example, on the the budget speeches, I wrote all those words beforehand, so they're written like a template. So when Alistair Darling or George Osborne came out, they were already there, and you then literally cut and paste them into the selected images and send them out. So I actually did really well one year, because I'd had all these selected, and I'd fine-tuned the process. So as soon as George Osborne was talking in Parliament, the newspapers had been given a review of his speech beforehand, but they're under a moratorium that is not allowed to publish anything until he's physically said something. So they have all these stories pre-written, but then they're desperate for an image. So I had a picture of him holding up the box, him facing one way, facing the other way to talk to different photographers. And they literally, because I got it really quick, mine were the first one. So I had like 5 different pictures only on their online webpage, that they then use those images quickly. They then used the Press Association and all these other photographers for the pictures that went in the newspaper. But you still get paid for the use online. Not as much, but you still get paid.
Well, that's brilliant, Craig. Thank you so much. We're conscious that you've got time not on your side.
I've got about
So
2 more minutes if there's any other questions.
I haven't got any more raising hands. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question?
I'll give one other tip for you about improving your photographs, and that is, that may sound really strange. When you're photographing somebody, before you take the picture, just move your head slightly to one side and slightly to the other, because your eye picks up on movement, and then you'll then see the person in front of you doesn't really change, but the background moves because you're working on a slightly different angle. And when you do that literally sideways step, you'll then realize there was a telegraph pole sticking out the head, or there was a fire extinguisher or a fire exit sign. And once you've realized you can move side to side, then you might want to go slightly higher or slightly lower, because your eye works on movement, not the static. And then it's amazing how your photos can improve. The other technique is take a picture and then look at it and going, what can I do to make that better? You know, what's distracting? Sometimes you need to get rid of some clutter, you zoom in a bit, or you move slightly to one side, and then you get a slightly better image. Yeah, so once you've got over that habit of moving side to side, then up and down. So if you're photographing children, don't photograph looking down on them, they always look really small. Sit on the floor and take a picture of them, so you're then at their height, and your images will improve dramatically.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think it's been a wonderful talk, and we've all learned a huge amount. I think we'd like all to wave and say thank you, as we can't applaud in the normal way. So thank you very much for that. I'll just finish by saying 2 things. Firstly, if you're not already a member of the Friend, please consider joining us. Just go on the museum website and look for support and then Friends. And lastly, we have another talk happening on the 29th of October, which is 2 weeks from now, with Charlotte Harker, who is a well-known illustrator and has produced many pinner scenes, and of course also was our first artist in residence for the museum. So we look forward to seeing you then, and many thanks again to Craig. Thank you very much.
Go out, take lots of pictures, because the one thing that people say when a house is burning down, they don't worry about things, it's the photo albums that people worry about most. So go and capture the memories and have a lovely time. Stay well, stay safe, and nice seeing you all. Bye now.